Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Portions of these manifestos detail the shooter's disgusting ideology of hate. Plainly put, this shooting was racially motivated and he hated black people. He wanted to kill niggers. That's the one and only time I'll use that word.
That was the voice of Jacksonville Sheriff T.K. Waters in the aftermath of the Dollar General shooting that took place over the weekend off of Kings Road in Jacksonville, Duval. So close to my home that I was able to attend the rally, the memorial service in the park that was held by Mayor Donna Deegan, which Ron DeSantis, I don't know if he was invited, but it didn't seem like he was welcomed. Here is the sound of presidential candidate Ron DeSantis being booed mercilessly by the black residents of Jacksonville. Now, for my part, I can't promise you that I am not one of the voices in the background booing. But we'll get to that a little bit later in today's episode. Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and gender nonconforming individuals to another episode of The Benjamin Dixon Show. Today is Monday. It is August 28th, 2023. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have been watching the news at all over the weekend, you will be aware that our city, my backyard, my home, Jacksonville, suffered a racist mass shooting where three black people were targeted and killed by 21-year-old Ryan Palmeter, who drove down from his nice, comfortable home in Clay County and drove to Edward Waters University, an HBCU, where he knew he would find the most black people. He drove to the blackest district in the city because he made it clear, according to Sheriff T.K. Waters, that he wanted to kill the N-word.
This shooting was racially motivated, and he hated black people. He wanted to kill niggers. That's the one and only time I'll use that word.
He wanted to kill N-words with a hard E-R. And so he got into his car and left Clay County, his nice, comfortable home. If you were watching local news, you could see that the neighborhood that this kid came from, this man, 21-year-old Ryan Palmeter, this racist terrorist, this right-wing, young, white mass shooter, left his comfortable home in Clay County, Florida, and drove to the blackest district that he could find. And again, he went to Edward Waters University, where my nephew plays football. And here is the audio from the TikTok where two students on campus, they observed the mass shooter putting on his bulletproof vest. And in this video, you won't be able to distinguish it in the audio, but in the video, you can see the campus security coming to chase off the shooter, 21-year-old Ryan Palmeter. Take a listen in.
Oh, no, he might do some shit, though. Oh, yeah, he locking that door. He got that bulletproof vest. And BSO is on the way. Yeah, it's suspicious.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Grab him.
Oh, they finna get his ass. I know they finna get his ass.
Shout out to those boys on campus, whoever that was, and anyone who reported it, because this could have been so much worse. And this is a tragedy. Right. I want to pause because I oftentimes my line of work, I see behind the veil of what's actually happening here. And so I sometimes, in my haste to point everyone in the direction of what's really going on, the fact that black people are under attack in this country, whether we know it or not, white people, especially young white mass shooters who are radicalized behind their computers, they are at war with black people. And sometimes in my haste to sound the alarm about that, I move past the tragedy that was Angela Carr, 52 years old, shot and killed at that Dollar General. That is someone's loved one. Gerald Deshaun Gallion, 29 years old. this one really hurts. All of them hurt. But this young man, AJ, Arnold Legary Jr., 19, just graduated not too long ago. And sometimes in my haste to sound the alarm about what is going on, what has been going on in this country, we saw this same MO, the MO of the shooter in Buffalo, New York at the Tops grocery store. That shooter left a manifesto, left his comfortable home, and drove to the blackest district in Buffalo, New York that he could find, and he targeted and killed black people. Okay, so in my haste and my coverage of what's happening around this country and how it is all interconnected, I sometimes move a little too quickly past the heart-wrenching tragedy that so many families are facing, but particularly right here in Duval, they're facing the loss of their loved ones to a senseless, racist terrorist attack.
Shooting into a black Kia and murders the first victim. Ms. Angela Carr. The suspect enters a Dollar General store and engages the second victim. I saw a young 19-year-old victim, Arnold Legary. At 1:09 and 50 seconds, the first 911 call goes out. At 1:10 and 30 seconds, victim Jared Gallion enters the store with his girlfriend. At 1:13 and 5 seconds, one round shot spotter initiates once again. At 1:13 and 10 seconds, the suspect shoots a third victim, Gerald Gallion. At 1:18, the suspect texts his father and says, "Use a screwdriver to get into my room." The father enters the room and finds a last will and testament of the suspect along with a suicide note on his laptop.
Angela Carr, 52 years old, Arnold Legary Jr., 19 years old, and Gerald Deshaun Gallion, 29 years old, all victims to this racist, entitled, spoiled, most certainly privileged enough to be able to afford and purchase the AR-15 styled weapon and the Glock that he used. Apparently he used his own money out of his own account at 21 years old, but felt that he was so aggrieved that black people were the enemy, that they were the problems, and he felt it so much that he left a last will and testament. And I know people are trying to point to mental health issues. That's what Republicans and conservatives do in this country all the time when it comes down to gun violence. They will only recognize mental health as an issue in this country when they can use it to delay the conversation about the weapons in this country, the gun violence that comes because of how many weapons have flooded our streets. And they most certainly will use it as an opportunity to deflect from the fact that this was a racist-inspired young white man who was radicalized by online media. If the parents in this situation are really lost, and it sounds like they don't know how their son got into this kind of situation, it sounds like they had no idea. Okay, I can tell you exactly where to look. Look at that manifesto. And we're going to talk about that manifesto when we come back from the break, and something I vehemently disagree with Sheriff T.K. Waters. As a matter of fact, let me take a quick aside. This is the clip. This is what Sheriff T.K. Waters said that I have to disagree with after the break.
I want to be very clear that there is absolutely no evidence that the shooter is part of any large group.
Oh, no. There is absolutely evidence that this man is connected to a much larger group, and the evidence is the very manifesto that T.K. Waters cites. And so when we come back from the break, we have to discuss this manifesto and the fact that there is a radicalization happening of young white men who are aggrieved, who feel like they are the most oppressed people on the face of the planet. And how could they think this when they live in the lap of luxury in this nice, comfortable neighborhood in Clay County? That's because right-wing media is telling them that they are victims, that they are aggrieved. So when we come back with more of the Benjamin Dixon Show after this break, we're going to dig into the real problem and why everyone needs to be on alert about the violence that these radicalized young white men are trying to bring to black people all around the country. We'll be back with more of the Benjamin Dixon Show right after this.
I'm in sync with the earth, 10 toes deep, flower child from the turf. I never switch sides, like even when I die, I'ma ride for the squad. Let our ties in the
The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
That's not real. But again, you have a governor who cares more about pandering to a base of voters, not even caring about what's happening here in our state of Florida and the 8,000 educator shortage that we have, right? The property insurance crisis that we're dealing with, the rising rent cost. No, he wants to be vindictive to Black folks because it gives him points in poll numbers. That's what we're dealing with. America, you are in danger, girl. We must stop Ron DeSantis in his tracks. I am not an angry Black woman. I am a woman who is speaking truth to power to let you all know this man means us no good. And it is evident by what transpired here yesterday in Jacksonville, Florida.
That was the voice of State Representative Angie Nixon, who was also in the park yesterday over in District 10. There is an iconic photo of Representative Nixon standing behind Ron DeSantis as the crowd booed him mercilessly. Again, I had an opportunity to be there yesterday, and funny enough, I was walking away because I had my kids with me. I had my wife and my kids with me, and we had been there for some time, and we were leaving, and I heard the crowd starting to boo, and I knew immediately that Ron DeSantis must have stood up and tried to pretend that he cared about what happened, and this was the response from the people of Duval. Now, for her part, Representative Nixon has come under fire for her comments about Ron DeSantis, especially online. The right-wing army, their army of trolls, thousands of them have attacked her on social media because of what she said. But I'm sorry, it sounds like she's not by herself here. It sounds like the entire city of Jacksonville rejects Ron DeSantis. And quite right when you consider, this is why I think it's so important for us to look at the manifesto and compare notes of the manifesto with all of the other manifestos. The Tops Buffalo grocery store shooting, you may forget about it because there's so many tragedies that happen in this country. We tend to forget our catalog of traumas. Because we have one trauma after the other. We forget about Mother Emanuel AME. Right, where Dylan Roof, that racist, white supremacist, young 20-something-year-old, he fits the same exact MO, the same exact profile. I mean, we can paint a picture of our unknown subject, right, of who is committing these right-wing terrorist acts of violence against the Black community, against the Muslim community. We can't forget the Quebec shooting, the mosque shooting inspired by right-wing media, went in and killed, seven or eight worshipers, just like they killed worshipers at Mother Emanuel AME. So there is a profile. And what's problematic about Ron DeSantis wanting to pretend as though he actually cares. I want to play a video of him and his response. And when he first heard about what happened in Jacksonville, you can tell that this man doesn't care. And the reason Representative Nixon and the people of Jacksonville reject Ron DeSantis is because we have to live underneath his administration. See, America is just getting introduced to Ron DeSantis, but we know this clown real good.
This shooting, based on the manifesto that they've discovered from the scumbag that did this, was racially motivated. He was targeting people based on their race. That is totally unacceptable. This guy killed himself rather than face the music and accept responsibility for his actions. And so he took the coward's way out, but we condemn what happened in the strongest possible terms. We've offered support for Sheriff Waters and the city of Jacksonville, and we send our condolences to the victims and their families who were the victims of a very cowardly act.
That was his first response, and I'm sorry, it lacks compassion. it lacks empathy, and it really just lacks concern. The reason Duval booed Ron DeSantis is because everything that Ron DeSantis stands for, his entire war on woke, this is the logical conclusion of the war on woke. While Ron DeSantis gets to run around the country running for president, using the Florida taxpayer dollars to run for president, and he gets to pretend like he's all nice and, he's a family man, and he gets to dress up in his suit and tie and his cowboy boots and pretend that he's a good, God-fearing, decent human being, the underbelly of his ideology and his war on woke always was going to lead to this type of violence. We can't take Ron DeSantis seriously when we consider the fact that if someone tried to teach the history of what just happened at Dollar General, they would not in Florida classrooms be able to teach that it was racially based because of actual legislation passed in the state of Florida, signed into law by Ron DeSantis, which is a part of his war on woke. The fact that Ron DeSantis banned the teaching of AP African American history in the state of Florida. Did we forget about that, Ron DeSantis? The fact that a part of his new curriculum, his revisionist history in the state of Florida that's being taught to middle school students is that there's some kind of benefit to slavery, to African Americans. Of course, Ron DeSantis was going to get booed in Duval because we know what he stands for. And just like Representative Nixon said, he's trying to bring this to all of the United States of America.
He wants to be vindictive to Black folks because it gives him points in poll numbers. That's what we're dealing with. America, you are in danger, girl. We must stop Ron DeSantis in his tracks.
We must stop Ron DeSantis in his tracks. I cannot emphasize enough that Ron DeSantis is merely the sanitized face of this fascism that we see creeping up all around the country. And it has come right to our backyards here in Jacksonville, Florida. And I need to take my time with this because I need to make the case and I need to make it plain that what's going on, contrary to what Sheriff T.K. Warder said, these are not lone wolf incidents. They are connected to a broader network of young white mass shooters who are being radicalized all around the country. They are being radicalized by right-wing media. They are being radicalized by far right-wing evangelical preachers who are literally calling for violence. I don't know what we expected to come of this particular season in American history when there are evangelical pastors who are calling for literal violence and murder. Should we be surprised when we see it manifest in the real world? So I have to take issue with what Sheriff T.K. Warder said here.
I want to be very clear that there is absolutely no evidence that the shooter is part of any large group. We know that he acted completely alone.
No, he didn't. He was not a lone wolf. And if we allow that narrative to seep in, if we allow that narrative to take control, then we are going to miss the interconnectivity of all of the mass shooters who struck Black people specifically. Mother Emanuel AME, Tops Buffalo, the grocery store, Tops grocery store in Buffalo, New York. The same exact MO of the shooter here in Jacksonville, Florida. They left manifestos. They left their nice homes in their predominantly white districts, and they intentionally targeted the blackest areas that they could get to, and they carried out their acts of violence. That is because there is a group of young white mass shooters who have been radicalized by right-wing media who believe that they are at war with Black people. And no matter how much we try to pretend like everything is okay, the reality of it is that this is not over because that ideology is still radicalizing young white men every day. What is that ideology specifically? It is the white replacement theory. It is the idea that white people are being replaced in this country, therefore they must go on the offensive to protect their majority status. It is a working theory that is passed on from Fox News all the way down to YouTubers. It is a prevailing theory of white replacement. It is a fear of white replacement, and it is white grievance. I want you to listen to this. This is what they're feeding themselves. Here's a clip of Candace Owens making it clear that she believes that the hardest thing to be in this country is a white, straight man.
And I will stand by this as much as I possibly can, and I will be the loudest voice. The actually worst thing to be in this society, if one thing I would not want to be, is a straight white male. Yep. For some reason, that's considered problematic, right? You have to be something. It's like people lie. They're lying on college applications. They're like, okay, I'm white, but I'm also trans. And you're like, what? Why are you pretending? It's because, I don't want people to think I'm too normal, right? And people, they're just trying to find something that makes them not white. Right. And it's really staggering to think that once upon a time, that is exactly what the experience was for a Black American, that being a Black American was so problematic that you weren't going to be allowed into the room. Now you have the exact same thing happening reverse, and you have liberals trying to convince you that that's equality. Yeah. It's not.
See, that's mainstream conservative thought. That is exactly what is being preached at every one of these mega conferences that they have. They have stadiums full of white people screaming at the top of their lungs that they feel like the worst and the most difficult thing to be in the United States of America is a white, straight man. And that is the only poison that is powerful enough to push that 21-year-old entitled and spoiled Ryan Palmeter to leave his comfortable home in Clay County, where he had everything he could ever need. Everything that he needed to be successful in life, he already had from his parents, but he was listening to the thinking and the theories that you just heard come out of the mouth of Candace Owens. It comes out of the mouth of Fox News, Tucker Carlson. It is all over conservative mainstream thought. They firmly believe that the most difficult thing to be in the United States of America is a white, straight man, and that is precisely the ideology that drove 21-year-old Ryan Palmeter to act out his racist act of terrorism against Black people. All right, when we come back from this patron party, I have audio of presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy victim blaming the Black community, saying, don't look at what happened in Jacksonville, look at the south side of Chicago, because that's exactly what conservatives do anytime something like this happens. We'll be back right after this.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
And here we go. Very special welcome to all of our newest patrons. Deborah Day, thank you so much for becoming a patron. Rosalind Sneed, thank you so much for becoming a patron. Tanya K, thank you for becoming a patron. And Ennis Ivory, thank you so much for becoming a patron. This entire patron party is for you. Turn it up. Oh. You too can become a part of this prestigious and most prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get twice the content, none of the commercial interruptions, and you get access to our upcoming revitalized and renewed patron party. Patreon.com/The BPD Show, and we will be back right after this commercial break, unless you are a patron, in which case you don't get any commercials. Oh.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Welcome back. Later today, I will be headed down to Jacksonville again to meet with the Baptist Ministers Conference Brotherhood of Duval and adjacent counties. They are a group of Black pastors who have historically taken the lead in the city of Jacksonville, and they are meeting in terms of how to respond as a community. In addition to all the other organizing, there are quite a few organizations. Tonight at 6 p.m. in James Weldon Johnson Park, there is a rally to oppose white supremacy. They were originally scheduled to meet as in celebration of the 60th year commemoration of the March on Washington, but they have dovetailed this into a fight against white supremacy, which is the core ideology at the heart of what drove 21-year-old Ryan Palmeter to do what he did. It is a white supremacist ideology. And so there is a protest and a rally tonight in James Weldon Johnson Park. And again, in a few moments, I will be leaving here to attend the regular meeting of the Baptist Ministers Conference Brotherhood of Duval. And we are expecting a statement from that organization. I want you to file this next clip that I'm getting ready to play under the fastest pathway to power in this country is attacking black people, as made evidence by none other than Vivek Ramaswamy, who is running for president of the United States. He has staked much of his entire campaign and most of his personality, his public personality, on anti-blackness. He regularly chimes in to attack the black community. Yesterday was no different, even in the aftermath of the racist violence that took place at Dollar General, where 21-year-old Ryan Palmeter made it clear that he was targeting black people precisely because they were black. Despite all of that, here is presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd yesterday morning. And listen to how he not only victim blames black people, but tries to deflect and say, don't pay any attention to the racism that we saw this weekend. Why don't you look at the south side of Chicago? And remember, in this clip, he's being asked about what happened in Duval at the Dollar General.
I think there are more race-based violent crimes on the right than on the left. Why is this a lot more pervasive on the right?
Well, the fact of the matter is, I think that there's a lot more violence that's also pervasive in parts of the country that supposedly are left-wing voter bases. So I don't think this is a left versus right issue, and I don't think we should try to politicize this through partisan goggles either, Chuck, especially in the wake of a tragedy like this one. The fact is, there are more black men dying on the south side of Chicago.
Do you ignore the elements that allowed this manifesto to spread online, and that it does feel as if social media connects some of these hateful ideologies?
Well, the fact of the matter is, I do think we have two standards that we're even applying if we're having a conversation about manifestos. We still have not yet even seen the manifesto of that transgender shooter in Nashville of a Christian school, and yet here we're focusing on the motive. So if we want to look at this through a politicized lens, let's look at what the political media and the political establishment is doing differentially in how they analyze different crimes and then create a new narrative around it.
A bunch of word salad. A bunch of word salad that means absolutely nothing except for the fact that Vivek Ramaswamy, just like Ron DeSantis, just like the rest of the conservative movement, they are completely and entirely incapable of identifying what happened Saturday for what it was. A racist terrorist attack from a right-wing, radicalized, young white male shooter, white male mass shooter. That's what happened, and they are completely incapable of saying that because, quiet as it's kept, these voters, these young, radicalized young men, they're part of the Republican voter base.
As a consequence of the so-called anti-racist movements.
Your argument comes across as blaming those that are trying to create equality for the rise in racism.
Well, the fact is, Chuck, I don't want to be playing a blame game. I want to be going towards a solution, and I am genuinely worried that those who earnestly espouse the view. I'm going to quote Ibram Kendi from his book directly. I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. Says the right answer to past discrimination is present discrimination. The right answer to present discrimination is future discrimination. I believe the people who hold that view are earnest about it, but I think they're wrong. And I think that that's actually creating more discrimination and more division in our country.
Listen, I don't care how quickly he speaks, right? This is a pattern and an MO of the conservative movement. They think that because they speak quickly and they say a whole bunch of stuff that they're actually saying something of substance. But what he is trying to convey here is precisely what Chuck Todd identified. We live in an era when white Republicans, just like their brown people of color who like to do the bidding of white supremacy, because that's all Vivek Ramaswamy is. He's a brown face of white supremacy. They are actively trying to blame black people who are fighting for justice in this country, they are trying to blame us for the actual racist violence and the state of racist tensions in this country. In other words, the fact that we're fighting for justice to them is the reason there's racism in the first place. Listen again.
As a consequence of the so-called anti-racist movements.
Your argument comes across as blaming those that are trying to create equality for the rise in racism.
Those who are trying to, that's exactly what the argument is, Chuck Todd. And I'm not a big fan of Chuck Todd, but this is the most salient and the clearest eyed view and opinion I think I have ever heard from Chuck Todd on Meet the Press on NBC. But this is precisely what people like Vivek Ramaswamy, presidential candidate, this is what they are actively trying to do. Now, listen, we're coming up at the end of the public episode, and I'm going to ask my patrons. Normally, the full hour is only available to patrons, but because of the nature of this particular incident, I want to keep the show public. So everyone stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to further dig into the comparisons between what happened in Jacksonville and what is happening all around this country, because I think black people need to come to alert. Without question, this is a part of an interconnected tapestry of white grievance and white replacement theory. It is a product of white supremacy. And no, I apologize, Sheriff T.K. Waters, but this is not a lone wolf incident. And if we are not careful, we will find ourselves seeing more and more of these so-called lone wolf shooters committing more and more acts of right-wing terror. We'll be back with more of the Benjamin Dixon Show right after this.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Portions of these manifestos detail the shooter's disgusting ideology of hate. Plainly put, this shooting was racially motivated, and he hated black people. He wanted to kill niggers. That's the one and only time I'll use that word.
Again, that's the voice of Jacksonville Sheriff T.K. Waters in the aftermath of the racist terrorist violence that took place over the weekend at Dollar General off of Kings Road in Jacksonville, Florida, which is terribly close to where I live. We attended the rally yesterday where Mayor Donna Deegan got a chance to speak, and Ron DeSantis showed up. Ron DeSantis was booed by the people of Jacksonville, and we've already covered why. Because the people of Jacksonville, just like the rest of the residents of the state of Florida, have had to live underneath the administration and the leadership of Ron DeSantis, and everyone in the state of Florida is clear that Ron DeSantis has been waging a war on blackness underneath the guise of calling it the war on woke. We are also very clear that what happened is the natural conclusion. It is the logical conclusion to any so-called war on woke, because it plays into Ron DeSantis's philosophy, absolutely plays into the white grievance and the white replacement theory, which is at the core of what drove this shooter to do what he did. Now, for his part, there are 3 manifestos that Ryan Palmeter allegedly left with the media, with federal authorities, and with his parents. Those manifestos have not been released. This is an important detail, because one of the major distractions that's happening on the national level, while we here locally are dealing with the aftermath and the families are grieving, these 2 young men and one 52-year-old black woman, families are grieving. And while we are grieving in Duval, we see at the national level, the propaganda games are afoot. This is what the media does whenever there is a clear act of racial violence, we see several things happening. We see conservatives try to deflect. We see them try to use anything they can to point the finger away from the 100% fact that this was a racist terrorist attack, and it is driven by white supremacy. It is driven by the same philosophy that no matter how Ron DeSantis tries to sugarcoat it, he tries to dress it up. The fact of the matter is that Ron DeSantis has had supporters show up in Tampa, Florida, at the Turning Points USA event last year, in Orlando, Florida, in front of Disney this year. They showed up with 3 flags. They had swastika flags, the same swastika that was painted on the gun of the shooter of 21-year-old Ryan Palmeter. He had a swastika painted on his gun. That's what he used at Dollar General. The same flag was being waved by Ron DeSantis supporters at Disney World this year and Tampa, Florida at the Turning Points USA event a year ago. And so it's hard for people to take Ron DeSantis seriously when he has yet to fully condemn the very neo-Nazis, the very white supremacist ideology that drove Ryan Palmeter to do what he did.
The suspect enters a Dollar General store and engages the second victim, a young 19-year-old victim, Anolt Laguerre.
One of his guns with a white swastika painted on it.
One of his guns with a white swastika painted on it, the same swastika that was flown by Ron DeSantis supporters at Disney World earlier this year. The same swastika flag that was flown at the Turning Points USA event. And each of those flags were flown by Ron DeSantis supporters who proudly flew DeSantis country flags side by side. I need you to get this visual image in your head to make sure that you're hearing me clearly. Ron DeSantis supporters in the state of Florida flew swastika flags right next to Confederate flags, right next to big blue DeSantis country flags. Okay? So when Representative Angie Nixon goes on MSNBC and says, America, you're in danger, girl.
He wants to be vindictive to Black folks because it gives him points in poll numbers. That's what we're dealing with. America, you are in danger, girl.
She means that we have a governor in the state of Florida whose policies are fascistic. His policies are anti-Black. He is waging a war on blackness, calling it a war on woke. So in this moment, when we are grieving because of this white supremacist terror, forgive us if Duval greets Ron DeSantis with this type of greeting. He was booed so mercilessly that Jacksonville's council member Jacoby Pittman had to jump in and try to protect and defend Ron DeSantis. Listen in.
We are not going to allow these institutions to be targeted by people. Let me say this.
Okay, listen, y'all. Let me tell you, we finna put parties aside, cause it ain't about parties today. A bullet don't know a party, so don't get me started.
Well, with all due respect to council member Jacoby Pittman, who was the organizer of the event, I want to pause and say that she organized a fabulous event. I was there. The setting was beautiful. The ambiance was perfect. The sound system was crystal clear. The dignitaries were all over the place. I got wonderful photos of all of the city dignitaries. But with all due respect to council member Jacoby Pittman, the booing that took place had literally nothing to do with political parties. I was there. I heard the booers, and quite honestly, I think I may have participated in a few boos myself. But the people who were booing were not booing Ron DeSantis because of any political party. I can guarantee you that many of the Black people that I saw out there in that park yesterday aren't even affiliated with the Democratic Party. And I can guarantee you that some of the loudest voices in the audience, I sat there and watched, they were not screaming because he was a Republican. They were booing him. We were booing him because his policies are reflective of the same hatred that drove that shooter to do what he did at Dollar General. But I get it. You know, you had dignitaries there, and so you wanted to put your best foot forward, and you didn't want the audience to be rude. Civility politics only go so far, people. Quite honestly, Ron DeSantis needs to be booed wherever he goes. We need to be very clear about the agenda of Ron DeSantis, and what we cannot allow to happen is the civility politics of regular, ordinary, everyday American politics, where we sit around and we have to behave a certain way to seem dignified, to seem as if we're civil. Meanwhile, we are ushering in, letting Ron DeSantis sit in Jacksonville in front of this community that is suffering because of his policies, letting Ron DeSantis sit there and take credit for showing up and showing compassion is itself ushering in, aiding and abetting his fascist agenda. If you know about what Ron DeSantis is doing in Tallahassee, Florida, without question, you know that he means nothing good by black people, nothing good whatsoever. And so he should be booed. In fact, he should not have even been allowed to show up. But sometimes American politics just lets things go so that we could have all of the dignitaries there, so we could have all of the officials there. The governor showed up and they wanted to show the governor respect. Well, the governor hasn't shown the black community of Florida any respect. And what happened in Duval is a natural extension of a so-called war on woke. I'm going to have to wrap it up here soon because I've got to hit the road and get down to the meeting of pastors along with the rally that's happening tonight. But there must be some concerted efforts and steps that we take right here in Jacksonville to be very clear and very specific. We need the manifesto to be released. All three manifestos of the shooter, 21-year-old Ryan Palmeter, need to be released because those manifestos need to be analyzed and compared to the manifesto of the shooter from Buffalo, New York, that did the exact same thing. He left his nice, comfortable, cozy home and drove to the blackest district that he could find in Buffalo, New York, went to the Tops grocery store and began shooting black people because they were black. Now, I had a chance to speak with Dr. Jonathan Blackburn, who is the president of the Baptist Association, who I will be meeting with later on today, and he is from Buffalo, New York. He is a pastor here in the Jacksonville area. He's originally from Buffalo, New York. He knows that Tops grocery store very well, just like he knows this community that was terrorized in Jacksonville very well. And it's a strange coincidence, or rather providence, that he is very directly connected to these two instances, these very specific instances of violence against black people. And what he had to say, and I'll be speaking with him again later on today and trying to get audio or a video interview, but he was drawing the parallels between those two shootings. The shooting in Buffalo, the MO, the manifesto mirrors exactly what happened in Jacksonville. And so there must be an analysis of the manifestos before Sheriff T.K. Waters can effectively conclude that he was a lone wolf and that he was not connected to some broader organization. We must compare the manifestos of the known mass shooters, these young white mass shooters who have specifically targeted the black community.
Portions of these manifestos detail the shooter's disgusting ideology of hate. Plainly put, this shooting was racially motivated and he hated black people. He wanted to kill niggers. That's the one and only time I'll use that word. I want to be very clear that there is absolutely no evidence that the shooter is part of any large group.
I have to emphasize for probably the sixth time in this episode, but every person, if you are in the city of Jacksonville, or if you're one of my listeners, I don't care where you are. You could be in London, England, from Duval to Senegal, wherever you are listening to my show. If you understand that this type of white supremacist terror is connected and deeply interconnected into a tapestry, then we need to see those manifestos analyzed. And so we're calling on Sheriff T.K. Waters to not only release all 3 manifestos, but to engage in an investigation that analyzes and compares the MO of the mass shooter in at the Tops grocery store in Buffalo, New York, with Dylan Roof at Mother Emanuel AME that killed all of those black worshipers during Bible study, and to the shooter, 21-year-old Ryan Palmeter in Duval at the Dollar General store in Jacksonville. We need to compare those manifestos side by side, because I'm telling you, we will find the same exact language. I'm guaranteed you're going to find the same precise talking points. You're going to see the same syntax, the same verbiage, because the verbiage is coming directly from right-wing media. It is coming from the echo chamber that promulgates all of the lies that we have to fight against every day, from Fox News down to Nick Fuentes, down to Jesse Waters, all the way down to Tim Pool. I can list every single podcast that this shooter most likely listened to, and we will find all of that evidence in the manifesto. So that's number one. We are calling on Sheriff T.K. Waters to not only release the manifestos, but to analyze them for similarities with other mass shooters. That's my time. I've got to get down the road to this meeting of ministers and to the rally. Patreon.com/the BPD show to support the show. And I will see you tomorrow with the rest of my points.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/the BPD show and support the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.